Good afternoon. Today we're in Ridgefield, Connecticut, and we are hosting the show from the Early Bird Cafe, one of the great diners here in Ridgefield, so we're very excited to be here. Ivan, who is your normal host, I hope we have lead-ins with statues of the Haitian patriots for the lead-in to this show. I would opt more for maybe a Statue of Liberty, maybe Mount Rushmore.
Empire State Building.
Empire State Building.
General Worcester.
General Worcester would be perfect, who was mortally wounded here in Ridgefield. But we're in Ridgefield today. We're taking Ivan's show on the road. Ivan is here. He's producing, helping out with the cameras, and he's asked me to host the show, so I'm very grateful to him for the opportunity. We're very excited about being here. Dave Searle is here as well. And next week we're going to be in Bethel, Connecticut, right? Your backyard. You'll have to find a diner.
A similar locale.
A similar locale. We're very fortunate to have the first selectman of Ridgefield, Rudy Marconi, who's agreed to be here for the whole hour. Appreciate it very much. Our normal group is here, Paul Trippi, originally from Bethel, Connecticut. He's a buyer for an industrial company.
And just because of her absence, I believe Mrs. Tabersack was not arrested at the war protest the other night. Just because she's not here.
Our one member of the panel has been out protesting the war, and I believe you have some footage of her.
We do. It was the other night. Can we get a shot of this, Dave? Danbury, there's Lynn. Sir?
Right there.
The Tabersack family can't seem to stay off of the front page of the paper. You notice Bob was there loading up his car right before Christmas, and Jay when he got sworn into the legislature. And there's Lynn. There's our friend Lynn.
Making your views known and the great tradition of democracy. And of course we have Matt Grimes here as well, a Brookfield resident, former chairman of the Board of Ed, and also a Jody Rell coordinator. And he works for a small upstart insurance company called the Hartford Insurance Company. So that's the cast of panel members.
I'm not here as a member of the Hartford.
I just wanted to start today, since it is NFL playoff Sunday, playoff weekend, just to get a few picks for the upcoming. Rudy, why don't we start with you?
You really want me to go on the air betting?
Yeah, no, this is no betting involved.
I'm
bear in
going
mind,
to abstain.
right, these picks, this show will be aired after these games have been played.
Right.
So, Bears, Seattle, any leaning?
Bears.
Bears, good. New England, San Diego?
San Diego.
San
I like
Diego?
the Pats, but I have to go with
Yeah,
San Diego.
we are agreeing on these picks. This is the...
So far, there are a few more games, Marty.
Okay.
Let's spill over the hood at
Philadelphia, New Orleans.
Probably New Orleans.
Okay, and then Baltimore Ravens and the Indianapolis Colts.
An interesting game. Indianapolis, the Colts have a powerful offense. Their defense has been slacking somewhat, and I think the Ravens are peaking at the right time.
All right.
I'll go with the Ravens.
I am lockstep with you. Quick picks before we get into the substance.
The team farther on the East Coast is always my pick.
The closest to the Atlantic Ocean will win.
New England.
So San Diego doesn't
No
have a
chance at all.
shot. How about yourself? Any quick picks?
Okay, yeah, I'll actually go in the Bears-Seattle game. I'll go with the Seattle Seahawks. Matt Hasselbeck has one of his cornerbacks back this week, so I'll go with the Seattle Seahawks. I think that they're going to be in much better shape than they were last week against Dallas. I'll definitely go with San Diego Chargers. Absolutely, the Baltimore Ravens are going to win. That defense is no match for Peyton Manning is no match for that defense. And I'll say that the New Orleans Saints definitely have the momentum on their side of the NFC.
Well, there you go. That's the NFL Roundtable, and now on to some
Please
more.
don't do anything based on what we said.
And all these picks will be validated because it'll be aired later. You had something you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I did. I've got a couple of things. Rudy, your fellow Connecticut Democrat, Chris Dodd, the big announcement this week is that he's running for president of the United States. I know you've known Chris for a lot of years. I know you respect him very much. He speaks highly of you. What do we think about that? Is that good for the Connecticut Democratic Party? Is it good for Connecticut? He's referred to himself as a dark horse. What do you think that means?
Well, I think it's more important whether it'll be better for the country or not. And I think Chris, in his many years of service to our country, has exhibited over and over again his concern for issues and the amount of hours he's willing to put in. I think he'd make a great candidate. I don't know what his chances are. It's early, I think, at this point. More importantly, we're concerned here in Ridgefield about the local elections. And although I wish Chris well, I hope he would do the same for me.
very good. I was very interested that I noted, Paul, that he didn't, he said, I'm not going to do the exploratory committee thing. I'm just going
Right.
to jump right in. I'm
And
running for
that
president.
sounds like Chris, doesn't it?
I think
That's
so.
the kind of guy he is. He's either going to do it
I
or
thought
he
that was
isn't.
genuine of him, though. so.
Right, very genuine of him. What do you
Definitely.
think of his chances?
Well, you know what, I would say that Chris Dodd, out of all the candidates, I mean, you seem to have people that support the war, people anti the war, people this, that, or whatever. I would say that Chris Dodd probably represents the mainstream Democrat in the United States. That doesn't say that he's got better chances or worse chances than anybody necessarily.
Right.
I think his dark horse qualification, that's what Jimmy Carter referred to himself as when he started, and I think that that's maybe a fair assessment at this stage of the game. But I think he represents the mainstream Democrat, definitely in Connecticut, and maybe in the United States.
One thing about Chris Dodd is he absolutely has that Senate seat locked up. I mean, isn't it a fair family heirloom that's been passed down from generation to generation?
Yeah, they got 6 years off for good behavior, but that's about it.
But other than that, I mean, at some point, you've been in the
His
Senate for
family's
years.
been there.
That seat is absolutely locked up.
It's not even up next time, too. It's up in 2010, the Senate seat.
Yeah, so he can pull sort of, not pull,
Doesn't have
he
to
can
do
be
it
like
either.
almost like a Lieberman, that's what I was saying, yeah, he can do a
Doesn't have
Lieberman where, he's got his safe Senate seat. But I mean, at some point, you're Chris Dodd, you're getting up in the morning, you've been a senator, you've done everything you can in the Senate, why not? Take
What do you
him
think about the
further.
Senator, Paul?
I don't know Chris Dodd. What I do know of him is from and the newspapers.
We are at a diner.
But I will say this, he's one of those candidates who, maybe he doesn't have a great shot, but like Joe Biden or anyone else, he's actually qualified to be the President of the United States, unlike Barack Obama.
Ooh. Go ahead.
He's a dynamic speaker. He's probably one of the best that the Democrats have nationally. He can energize a crowd, at least on television, like very few that I've seen. I wish him well. I don't think he's going to win at the end of the day, but we'll see what happens as the year unfolds.
Maybe he'll surprise all of us and be there.
He very well may.
I would say that he is the leadership figure of the Connecticut Democratic Party right now. Yet some people...
Barack Obama.
No, it's Chris Dodd.
Chris Dodd, okay.
We had some people not happy with Senator Lieberman, and obviously did not support him in this election of the Democratic Party. I'd say Dodd is the elected official figurehead of the Democratic Party in Connecticut right now.
No question about that. The question is, though, do we ever think anyone from New England would ever become a president of the United States? Do we? Some people doubt that very much. Like we said, we'll see.
All right, we're bringing it down to a more local level. There's some questions that have come up out of the paper and some other places. One, just about local commercial tenants in town. We have Air Age. I know you had some sort of news on that, what's going to happen since the paper came out. We have an empty building with Schlumberger and how that's going with the Economic Development Commission. And just in general, how do you see Ridgefield attracting more commercial tenants, and what's the importance of that?
Well, I think being chairman of the Board of Finance, you certainly know well what the importance is of a good commercial tax base. One thing you have to realize before we get into the areas that you mentioned, Beringer Engelheim, which is our largest corporate partner today, a couple of years ago we approved a major expansion and a tax abatement for them. They are in the building phase of that right now. They've completed their child care facility of about 15,000 square feet, and they're coming in with the next big building as we speak, really, which would generate, I think, approximately 60 to 100,000 square feet of additional space. That program that they're going through now is going to yield about another 5 to 6 million a year once we make it through the tax abatement year. State statute, we're not allowed to do anything unless enabling, do anything in terms of tax abatements unless we have the enabling legislation.
Well, what's on the table? 7 years, was it?
7 years, but
7
that
years.
7-year time, that 7-year clock begins the day the CO is issued. So what you will see is a ramping up. Al Garzi, our tax assessor, will revalue the property as improvements are made. So taxes will increase, and then there'll be a drop, and then it slowly come back.
And just so we're clear, it's a 7-year tax abatement, essentially on the addition, if you will.
Doesn't affect any of the existing.
What they're paying, okay, good.
So taking that in mind, we're going to be generating about another 5 to 6 million a year on build-out. That equates to at least 5 or 6 Schlumbergers. And people need to keep that in mind. If we were to generate the type of development or commercial tax base that some people are talking about, I've had meetings with Mr. Garzi, it's going to have an impact on how our town looks. So we need to make a decision. Do we want those big revenues from the retailers and the commercial? Do we want the box stores in town? Do we want to change Route 7 on zoning? Don't forget, we have very little room left. We have no land that's zoned corporate with the exception of the south side of Bennett's Farm Road. And that's a private owner, it's in court, it's in litigation. But let's get back to your question. You were talking about Schlumberger. They went dark on December 31st. There are people in the building, but technically what they do is they transfer the operations over to their Texas operation, who's head of real estate. Tom Zimmerman is out. He's no longer in charge. It has become now a corporate entity in terms of the maintenance and operations. The EDC is working very hard. As you know, chairman of the board, myself, we approved in our respective boards $40,000 to put together necessary information and consultants to come up with, hopefully, a roadmap to getting people in there. But I have to say that we have had several local people who are very, very interested. I put them in touch with the proper people at Schlumberger. And my hope, and fingers are crossed for one of these gentlemen to end up with the ownership of that building, keeping it the way it is today, and moving their own companies here. So that would be the optimal solution. Schlumberger.
I don't know how Bethel and Brookfield do it, the balance between commercial real estate, residential real estate. Ridgefield has its own flavor, its own family-oriented population, and want to maintain that. Yet at the same time, people are concerned about their taxes always going up, and the only place that we have where we can raise taxes is real estate taxes, and that hits those very same, young families with children that are attracted here because of the schools and so forth. It would just be great if we could attract the right type of commercial tenants to come in. I think the Schlumberger building, it would be great if we had a tenant in there. Whatever we're doing for Bowling or Engelheim, let's continue to do it.
Right.
Send them Christmas cards,
And
send them fruit baskets, tell them we appreciate, give them a key to the town, whatever you have to do.
We have had
Let's keep
recent
it.
meetings with them because what they're looking at is the next round of expansion, believe it or not. Not what's taking place now, but let's go out another 20 years. And corporate has asked them to do an evaluation. How many square feet would be allowed on our campus? So they know when the time comes to expand, where they're going to locate and how much of that square
And then
footage.
Schlumberger, go ahead.
On our show last week, you mentioned property tax, about how that's where Ridgefield probably takes most of its revenue is from the property tax on the commercial and the residential property.
Mainly residential.
Someone asked the first selectman something I asked the Board of Finance chairman on our show last week. Rudy, what is your opinion on Governor Wells' plan to eliminate the personal property tax on cars and trucks? I know you got a lot of people that complain about property taxes probably all the time. What's your opinion of it?
Without going into a great deal of detail on it, the concern is that we will be receiving payments in lieu of, if you will, correct?
From the state.
From the state. And
Check your mailbox. Checks in the mail.
Therein lies the problem. The legislature will, in future years, have the opportunity, if they need to cut that back and allow us to continue to control that part of our taxes. That's most important, and our tax assessor, Al Garzi, agrees with that 100%.
I know Al very well. He's very active in Brookfield.
Correct. And you can talk to Al, but in a nutshell, that's pretty much where we're at.
The big argument that I hear, everybody I think is for eliminating the car tax and truck tax. It's a question of how you pay for it, and that it's hard to believe that the state is going to have infinite number of checks to cut to Brookfield and Bethel and Ridgefield and Danbury for the rest of its life.
We have a little history here. Look at the manufacturer's exemption. That was taken away from us. We're not allowed to charge taxes. The manufacturer comes into Ridgefield. They get a tax break by the state, and then the state pays us monies, and it's in our budget and revenue. And that has slowly been eroded and talked of possibly getting down, I think it's at 70% now.
Something like that,
60 to 70, and there's always talk during the budget season of not reimbursing the communities what it was last year. And that's a perfect example of why we don't like the elimination of the car tax.
So you just like the individual taxes coming to town hall, not via Hartford.
Right, correct.
It's a golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rule. And Hartford's got that money, and we have to come begging.
Yes.
I think it needs to explain how it will be a permanent plan. I'm for eliminating the personal property tax on cars and trucks. I think it's a very right step in the direction of property
Don't get me
tax.
wrong, I'm not against the elimination of a tax, but another example is the probate court system.
Exactly.
The probate court system is in trouble now, financially, and they eliminated the inheritance tax. They eliminated the tax before forecasting or coming up with a solution how they were going to support the system. And now the towns are being told, you may have to kick in more, you may have to consolidate, and time out. No, you decided at the legislature to eliminate that tax, you created this problem, come up with a solution. No more unfunded mandates.
For whatever it's worth, too, Hartford, as we speak right now, is awash in money. They have more money. All the taxpayers in the town, in the state of Connecticut, can go to bed tonight knowing that you've been overtaxed by the state, and they are awash in a budget surplus that somehow needs to be better managed.
Plus, the state came on the side of, the positive side of some very big lawsuits as well, so
That's good.
that's part of it.
Paul, how do they handle the commercial tax base in Bethel?
Build it up.
I think recent history in Bethel has been we'll take what we can get.
Okay.
With our Route 6 corridor, which would be analogous to Route 7 here,
Right.
We have a Target store now, which was, not overly well received by residents of the neighborhood, but it was approved because there is a greater good for Bethel. It's needed tax dollars for a town like Bethel. But we're actually coming to the point where Ridgefield is, where we have very little land left. We are the most densely populated town in Connecticut, excluding an incorporated city, but we have 19,000 people in 17 square miles. That's a lot of people in very
You're
small,
about half the size of Ridgefield geographically.
with
Land mass.
not that many less residents. We're 22 or 3 now?
We're 24,
24. Okay.
They're 19, right?
We're 19, almost 20, with more condos and high-density development coming every
affordable
day.
housing.
And affordable
Senior housing.
And senior housing. We lucked out, 15 or 20 years ago when Duracell built the corporate headquarters in Bethel. Very similar to Beauregard coming here. That was a boom for the town.
Yeah.
But they've slowly moved out as Gillette and Procter & Gamble incorporated or purchased what was formerly Duracell. They've moved people out. They've moved operations out up to Boston.
That's one thing that's so vexing about the commercial, the commercial client. You can roll out the red carpet, you can give them all the bells and whistles, you can give them a tour, you can tell them how great it is, but oftentimes these decisions to either move somewhere or, worse, like Schlumberger, has absolutely nothing to do with the way the town is treated on the taxes or what have you.
They're very good.
They leave. Why does Schlumberger consolidate into, it has something to do with oil,
Geological exploration.
geological exploration, what they're doing, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the town. Why did Bullring and Engelheim expand here? Well, I guess you can take credit for it. I mean, in one sense, you can take credit when they expand, and I guess you got to take the hit when they leave. One's the same.
That's the bad news with the commercial side of the scale with respect to taxes.
Yeah.
Commercial property taxes are great, yes, in that it's not coming out of the resident's pocket.
Yeah.
However, we find that the rate of appreciation is much lower than your residential component. So when we do a reval, like Richfield is doing right now, we're in the middle of a reval.
Yeah.
And people are going to be screaming when it's over. Why did my taxes go up? We collect the same amount of money before or after than we did before. We were collecting $1 million before, we're collecting $1 million after. It's a reallocation of the wealth in the community.
But
That's what we're
even so,
doing.
Brookfield has faced, and New Milford has faced, and I'm sure Ridgefield faced. 5 years ago, we did our reval. We had a record number of cases before the Board of Assessment Appeals. We expect that again this year.
We didn't.
You didn't?
No.
How'd
We
you
had
do it? How'd you explain it?
very few.
We have Al Garzi. He's
disregard-
considered, he works here. He lives where you live, but he works here, and he's has a lot of credibility.
You can talk to Al about it, but we had very, very, very few complaints. There were some, and people came in and we talked to them. That's why we have a Board of Tax Appeals, and it worked out fine, but a very low number.
But Paul's absolutely right about one thing.
Yeah,
about
sorry, I
Bethel.
interrupted.
No, Paul's absolutely right about one thing about Bethel. Bethel and Brookfield face the same problem in this regard, especially with commercial development. Brookfield does not have a downtown like Bethel does, but
They will.
Berkshire Park, but not really. We got a village business
I
concept.
saw a
coming
nice
along.
schematic, a nice conceptual
That's the
plan.
village concept, but it's not a downtown. It's the village concept, village business
Right.
district.
You don't have a downtown like Richfield.
We do not. Like Bethel does, like New Milford does, like Newtown
Right.
does.
3 towns in Fairfield County: Bethel, Ridgefield, New Canaan. That's it.
Okay. Well, anyways, what do you mean?
That have an actual defined, what I would call a New England
Danbury is
downtown.
downtown.
Town, not a city.
Okay.
A town.
But anyway,
I believe Ridgefield has been repeatedly voted the #1 town in Connecticut, so I think by consensus,
Well deserved.
our downtown is
125,000.
considered the most scenic and Norman
My
Rockwell
point is,
esque. Sorry, you're making a
one
point.
of the
Go ahead.
one of the common problems Bethel and Brookfield have is when a developer comes into Berkshire Corporate Park, which is the biggest piece of commercial land in the area, they say, "Don't show me Bethel, don't show me Brookfield. I want to see Danbury. I want to see Danbury."
Why?
And it's been the case because of what Danbury does when a business comes into town.
but they
The land
can't
use
do that
process, the land use process is a lot easier for them. The tax base is a lot better, and they always
That's a
come to Danbury.
misconception, because we were able to prove during the BI negotiations on this tax abatement, and Garza...
BI, just for...
Beringer Ingelheim.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Al will confirm this, that we were able to prove to Danbury that Richfield's tax is about 15% lower than Danbury. And you're going to look at me like, all right, come on, Rudy. That's a fact.
Well,
Dollar for dollar.
the
The
lower,
real estate values are much higher, so your taxes, you'll hear from people who are paying a lot more taxes, but the tax rate on a dollar for dollar is lower than what it is.
the Lowe's Home Improvement Center was all set to go in Brookfield, right there across from the ShopRite Plaza on Federal Road.
Right.
What happened overnight? Over the border to Danbury. They're getting a lot better deal than they did in Danbury. They're getting a much better land use process, and I think they're much
I
happier.
can't argue that on the land use process, because we were most concerned about the old Union Carbide property. Remember with the casino discussions and that whole scenario? All of a sudden, they came in, they're building 1,800 to 2,200 homes, and there was no public hearing.
Yeah. You go
There
out,
was no
you go out
public
Ridgebury
hearing.
Road here, and once you get across the town line into Danbury, it's just wall-to-wall construction sites. And, I mean, you know, maybe Danbury is being more aggressive on attracting corporate development and high-density residential
That's all
development.
residential.
Yeah, and...
Maybe 1 million square feet, excuse me, a
Yeah.
component of 1 million square
Which
feet.
is a concern for us
Corporate.
because some of that traffic bleeds through our town, which is, you know...
In terms of residential housing, though, I mean, one thing I wanted to ask Rudy and Marty about is, in Brookfield, in the past 3 years, we've started 3 senior age-restricted communities. We wouldn't have thought of that years ago. We almost have our own heritage village now
Right.
up north now. Does Ridgefield have senior communities?
No, we don't.
coming
We
in?
do, well, I stand corrected there. We have a few small, Toll Brothers just put up 70, I think 73 homes, 72 homes,
Are those age-
age 62 years of age or older. And then we have a couple of small ones that, 55, but very, very small. The one project that was discussed was the south side of Ben's Farm property. Eureka did come into planning and zoning, and we're looking at roughly 300 units on 155 acres. The interesting about age restricted, and I talked to Al Garzi about this, if we could create, because although it's looked at as residential, people automatically assume, we don't want any more residential, that's bad. Well, Ridgefield is not the nerve center of corporate America. We're not the heart that pumps the blood to keep corporate going. Can we get some corporate? Sure. But we do need, I believe, an age-restricted development because the tax revenue generated surpasses that of
No kids in the school system.
no kids in the private roads. We have private roads, and I think we need to seriously look at that as a way of generating some additional tax revenue at a very profitable
Well, if
rate.
you can get a Newberry Village, like Brookfield got recently, we basically have our own heritage village.
Were you in favor of that?
Absolutely. I think it was great for a lot of seniors that moved there. I think it's like its own little retirement community.
Now, a lot of the seniors
Very
here are
popular.
saying that they're being forced out of our community because of taxes. It's actually the size of the home, and they have some very nice homes. They would like to be able to scale down, but there's nothing for them to scale down to.
The only thing that I think elected officials are a little bit upset about with Newberry Village and Brookfield is it brought over 200 votes against the budget.
That's always something that the Board of Education is going to be concerned about. What are we doing to the balance of votes?
Yeah.
You were talking about commercial property in Bethel.
Oh, well, yeah, it's a while ago. I mean, you know, we more than some towns, certainly more than a town like Reading or Easton. You know, we've been fortunate to have 2 very successful corporate parks in Bethel: the Berkshire Park and the Francis Clark Park, which is just down on Route 53 in Bethel. And we've had some success with light industrial. You know, not large buildings, but large enough to provide jobs in the community and some sort of a commercial tax base. We have done fairly well. There's a new Big Y market opening up on Route 6 in Stony Hill with an accompanying shopping center to abut it, so we have had some success. The problem is, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whenever it happens, we really are out of land. And at that point, I don't know how a town like Bethel or Ridgefield continues to grow
It's a
in a
great
fashion
consideration.
we are accustomed to. Do we grow higher? Do we want that? Is it possible? I don't know that it quite fits in with the atmosphere of the region. So there are hard times
Is
to
there a
come with a
constituency-
greater burden focused on residents in a town like Bethel.
Is there a constituency in Bethel that would be anti-commercial development, like,
there's
you
always
said the Target store, there was a group that came
Sure,
out against
the
that?
not in my backyard people, and they always have a valid argument that, often they do have, there is a negative effect on their property values. But, if you buy a house next to a huge tract of land that's already been zoned, commercial or industrial, well, that's kind of your problem. It's your short-sightedness. Just like I'm sorry, but the idiots that buy a house next to an airport and then complain about airplanes.
Rudy, any thoughts on that?
I wouldn't refer to them. They're residents, they're constituents.
I meant the Danbury residents, not the Richfield residents.
I have no comment on the Danbury residents. I'll leave that to Mayor Mark.
But with Bethel, you have an interesting situation. You talk about the NIMBYs and everything. You've got a big contingency of people in Bethel that have been there their whole lives. Their parents were there, their grandparents were there. Plus, you have people that come in and out. I'm sure you have them in Ridgefield that are in and out in 5 years. They come here, stay for a few years, and then move on.
What happens often is right when the high school graduation ceremonies are over, the real estate signs go up and they're out. That's been a pattern.
We haven't seen that in Brookfield as much, but we, I don't know, as Jerry calls it, the glowing community between two lakes, I don't know.
Okay, couple other, go
I have to
ahead.
say, in a town like Ridgefield, and I think Bethel and Brookfield certainly share this, Matt, you're 27, 28, 26, I'm 30.
By the
most
way,
people,
for our viewing audience, and this is a little background check that I checked for, both Matt and Paul are single, unattached. Is that overstating it? They're significant. Generally, they are unmarried young men, and I think Ivan, if they were to phone in at Comcast, could they maybe arrange some?
What's this, a personal dating service show?
I just feel for Matt, unattached young men like this.
Murray, you're the one that has a MySpace site.
Okay, so, anyways, but next week when we're.
A MySpace?
Actually, I don't have a MySpace. My 14-year-old daughter does.
Oh, you're blaming it on the kids.
And I'm fascinated by it. I can't, it's very interesting. But anyways, I'm sorry, back to hard-bitten politics.
as a
You wouldn't be willing to field any overtures by way of cable TV.
I'm afraid that,
Sorry,
that
sorry.
most of the folks that watch this show are, well, I'll leave that aside.
Not in our generation.
I think we have a very young, hip demographic, so
It's not being broadcast on the televisions, the TKs or the Spot or anything.
just
like
call
that.
Comcast Cable, they'll take a message. Okay, go ahead.
As the chairman of the Board of Finance and as the first selectman, I think you probably see people in Matt's and I rough age group and younger fleeing Ridgefield as fast as they can.
It's not just
We're very
that.
much
I was
struggling to
have been involved in Young Life, which is a high school Christian organization in town, and kids that I was working with at Ridgefield High School 10 years ago now, newly married, have their first kid, they're moving out of town. We had a builder in town that went to the high school here, and he says all the people that graduated in his graduating class, there's a few exceptions, John Fry or something like that, but most of them cannot afford to buy a starter house here and even get their foot in the door, which is a concern.
And Ridgefield being far more expensive than most of the towns in the region, that's still true of Newtown and Reading and Bethel.
Yeah.
Newtown more so now. Brookfield and Bethel not as much.
It's still difficult.
Newtown has come up quite a bit.
Yeah,
Newtown is
It's exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, Brookfield, if you look at 1990, Bethel had a higher per capita income than Brookfield. That's changed.
yeah.
Mostly because
Bethel's gone down, not Brookfield necessarily going up.
no, I mean, actually what's happened is because of the growth in the region as wealth moves north, you had the land to build wealthy, larger homes and wealthier people move in. Bethel just doesn't have that option. We're stuck in neutral at that point. But, I think that's a fact of life that a certain generation kind of leaves this area for a variety of reasons.
always been the case.
And there are market forces at work there, and, I think it's just a reality. But is that a concern for Ridgefield, that you kind of have that, you don't find that legacy, it becomes a transient population at that point?
I think it is. When I in 2003 I had the pleasure of having a campaign against the existing first selectman, and I met a lot of people, talked to a lot of people, and I remember, and Rudy remembers me telling the story, I would be doing doors and knocking on doors, and there was one door I
With the
knocked
Segway?
on. Yeah, with the Segway on some of the hinterlands, zipped around on that. But I knocked on one door, and there was a for sale sign. And I said, "Hi, I'm running for first selectman. I'm concerned about the taxes going up." And they said, "You're too late. You know, we can't take it anymore. We're moving out." And they had a for sale sign on their sign. The other side of the coin, though, is there's a pretty healthy real estate market in town as well. There are people moving in, and you know.
Very interesting to see the change that's taken place in the community because